I'm your host, Zoe Fox. We'll be diving deep into how to scale iconic food brands from 5 million to 50 million and beyond while building a stellar team from some of the most iconic brands in the food industry. They've moved from startups to absolute major players. We have Laura from Tony's Chocolonely, Pip Murray, who is the founder of Pip and Nut, the natural nut butter brand famous for its clean ingredients. John from BioMe, a gut health focused company. Shani, my twin redhead in FMCG sales, head of sales for Perfect Heads, revolutionizing the plant-based energy market with its matcha-based drinks. How each brand, their journeys from growing their businesses from 5 to 10 to 15 to then some insane numbers. Tony's Chocolonely is about to close 2024 with 198 million.
The one thing that has never quite changed is the mission. We're trying to tackle the problem of exploitation. The root cause is poverty, because the big brands, the big chocolate brands just don't pay enough. Every decision that we make is about making an impact.
Our identity has been a big part of, I guess, trying to bring a bit of emotion and playfulness into what was quite a traditional and sort of boring category at the time. From the early days, we did look quite different right from the get-go.
Storytelling has been so important to the growth of Perfect Head. You can actually see Marissa's face in our brand story on the back of it. She has ADHD and anxiety. A friend introduced her to matcha, and in her words, it quite literally changed her life. Last year, they went on Dragon's Den. We brought Stephen Bartlett on board as an investor. We realised that we had built this really strong community that really resonated with our story, and we were really filling a customer need.
We've been product-led. Our entire obsession has been about making products that are best for your gut health, but that taste nice. Every one of our products is designed by my co-founder, Dr. Megan Rossi. She is the gut health doctor, and therefore every single product has a health claim on it. We absolutely then have to fit the criteria of being good for your gut health.
Well, massive round of applause for our 4 amazing panelists.
Well done.
Well done. So, thank you very much for spending your Tuesday evening with me, and welcome to a very special live recording of Getting to Grow. I'm your host, Zoe Fox, if you didn't know. My day job is I head up the out of home team at Coconut Collaborative, and then I started a podcast in lockdown, which has gone from strength to strength, and I'm super excited to be able to do things like this now, which is amazing. And on tonight's panel discussion, this is my first actually live panel discussion. I've done lots of kind of like in-person ones with just one-on-one founders, but we'll be diving deep into how to scale iconic food brands from 5 million to 50 million and beyond while building a stellar team, and like how you guys have done it. It just is amazing, and we're here to dive all deep into it. Our panelists today are founders and leaders from 4 extraordinary brands that have disrupted categories and scaled impressively, all while staying true to their values and mission. Whether you're an entrepreneur, brand builder, or fan of these great products, which you all have in your goodie bags, you'll leave with actionable insights from some of the most iconic brands in the food industry. So joining us are 4 insane leaders from insane brands. They've all faced challenges of scaling fast, building high-performance teams, and staying true to their missions. They've moved from startups to absolute major players. So we have Laura from Tony's Chocolonely. She is the UK sales director and Ireland. For nearly 6 years, she's been growing the phenomenon that is Tony's Chocolonely, the chocolate brand on a mission to help and basically solve slave trade in the chocolate industry. Pip Murray, who is the founder of Pip and Nut, the natural nut butter brand famous for its clean ingredients, delicious flavors, and launching new and innovative products, which you also have in your goodie bags. Reese's Who, once you try these, you won't go back, ever. We have John from BioMe, who is the founder, alongside Megan Rossi of BioMe, a gut health focused company helping consumers understand the importance of gut health through delicious science-backed products. And of course, Shani, my twin redhead in FMCG sales, head of sales for Perfect Heads, an energy brand that's revolutionizing the plant-based energy market with its matcha-based drinks. So please can I have a round of applause for our amazing panelists. So we're going to hear about how each brand, their journeys from growing their businesses from 5 to 10 to 15 to then some insane numbers from Tony's, and how they've built this along their strong brands and made themselves really stand out in like incredibly crowded markets that you guys are kind of dealing in. There will be time at the end for Q&A, so please get your questions ready and thinking caps on. Laura, I'm going to start with you from Tony's, a brand which has made incredible strides with its purpose-driven approach. Scaling a brand while staying true to its core values can be a real delicate balance. So, Tony's Chocolonely generated 133 million revenue in 2022, then rose to 150 in 2023, and is about to close 2024 with 198 million. This has been driven by your mission to make 100% slave-free chocolate the norm. How have you managed the balance, big question, between fast growth and staying true to your ethical mission as the company scales to a market leader?
That's quite the introduction. Thanks. It's 198 million globally. I'm responsible for the UK and Ireland, and we, in 6 years, have managed kind of quite a successful challenge of establishing ourselves. And we're going to close the year. I was chatting to John earlier. Wow. Anywhere between 39 million and 40 million. 39.5 to 40.
I love that. 39.5 or 40.
And so I've joined the business before there were any Tony's Chocolonely in the UK. So it's been amazing to be part of that journey. And I guess I've seen the business transform. I've seen it in all different kind of shapes, forms, structures, and go from we were a team of 4 back in the day, back in 2019, to a team of 30 now. But the one thing that has never quite changed is the mission. And it's quite interesting to be part of a business that is all about creating positive change and making an impact. So I remember kind of the very first year, the CEO at the time was Henk Jan, before Douglas joined from Innocent to head up the business at Tony's. And he said something that really stuck with me, which was every decision that we make is about making an impact. So if you're wondering whether you should do something or not, any business decision was always linked to, is this helping us get closer to achieving our mission, which is to end exploitation in chocolate? And I think having that as kind of your North Star really helps stay focused and make the right decision. So I think that's probably the one thing, is having a really clear vision, really clear mission, helps you stay true to the brand, and kind of, I think that's also very true to the way we work and our values in the day-to-day job.
I think that's like a really important perspective, because I think when purpose really drives brand loyalty. And speaking of loyal customers, like Pip, your brand is built on such a strong following. It's fun, it's relatable, like a massive identity, and you guys have grown to 15 mil? Yeah, about 18 million now, which is amazing. Turnover by like embracing the kind of like really fun, vibrant and relatable brand identity. So how has your branding contributed to scaling up, and what challenges have you faced in maintaining that identity?
Yeah, great question. I guess Pip and Art has, our identity has been a big part of, I guess, the reasons why I think we've been so successful. I guess when I first created the brand, worked with an amazing agency to kind of bring the brand to life. And a big part of that was about trying to bring a bit of emotion and playfulness into what was quite a traditional and sort of boring category at the time. And it was a category, I guess, 12 years ago. It was basically very brown, lots of monkey nuts, nothing particularly exciting from an innovation point of view, but also the brands on shelf just really weren't doing this really great product justice. So I think from the early days, we did look quite different right from the get-go when we first started speaking to retailers. And it definitely helped get us that cut through, having really like disruptive packaging on shelf. Now I'm going to sort of play on the classic zig when you're zagging, and where do you kind of follow category norms and conventions, and where do you sort of pull away from them and be a bit different? And so Pip and Art was all about kind of owning white space, quite literally. Like white is a key color for us. I mean, color is a key theme, I guess, for some brands across this panel. But yeah, white was a really key thing for us to get that kind of brand blocking across the shelf, but also our identity itself, highly distinctive, and obviously played and riffed on my name as well, which I think really helps sort of bring a bit more kind of distinctiveness to our product and category. But I think the challenge, I guess, as we're scaling is that, as, we were successful in the market, other brands started to catch up, and, brands, do their refreshes and update their packaging. So you've got to constantly look at how do you continue to kind of pull away from it, but still keeping yourself kind of distinctive in the category itself. And I think that's one thing, paying close attention to your packaging and making sure you're constantly iterating and really challenging yourself as to how you're showing up on shelf, because that is your best form of advertising. So sweat it as hard as you possibly can. But I think also just kind of making sure you define very clearly what are the things that make you so distinctive, and continually repeating them and playing upon them to try and build that moat around your brand. So for us, squirrels, they are a big part of our brand. We have ridiculous amounts of nut and squirrel puns that we riff in and out of across our kind of pods and advertising. It is something we really try and sort of play upon, and it's distinctive to our brand. And I think our playfulness, our tone of voice is also a really big part of making sure that we kind of, again, sort of don't become wallpaper and be a bit more playful and cheeky. Other brands will find that a challenge, I think, to have that kind of tone of voice. So again, really defining that and making sure you hold tight to it, because again, as you grow, it can drift. So making sure you're really clear on, what makes you most distinctive from a visual identity point of view and from a tone of voice point of view. So those are probably a few of the things that I think we think about a lot at Pip and Nut. Squirrel tails is, pays a lot of attention to that.
Definitely, and you're Pip from Pip and Nut, so that also really well.
Yeah.
And then Shani, you're a fabulous example of this as well, because you are the green queen. You, Marissa, Teddy, live, breathe. Your entire brand is green. Everyone that works for you is green, and I just know you as green, and it really works. So how does storytelling play a role in scaling your brand? Because you've continued with the green theme, and it is really relatable. It's something that I always think of, and you're basically going to be McDonald's one day and just have the colour green and go, everyone's going to, oh yeah, perfect Ted.
I hope so. I actually really love that you just said that Teddy is the green queen. So
yeah, he is the green queen. He's totally the green queen.
He is. No, storytelling has been so important to the growth of Perfect Ted. And in fact, if you turn around our account, you can actually see Marissa's face and our brand story on the back of it. And that's because it has been so core to the growth of the business. And for those that don't know Marissa's story, she has ADHD and anxiety. And when she was at uni, she was drinking copious amounts of coffee and Red Bull, which didn't make her symptoms any better. And she had jitters and crashes and made her anxiety a lot worse. And then a friend introduced her to matcha. And in her words, it quite literally changed her life. And when she came back to the UK with our other founders, Levi and Teddy, they realized that matcha wasn't really in the UK. You couldn't get a matcha latte at a coffee shop. You couldn't pick up matcha powder in the supermarket. But also there weren't that many natural energy drinks that appeal to them, but particularly appeal to women, which I'm sure is something that we can relate to. And that's when they kind of had their light bulb moment to leverage matcha as an ingredient and put it into a natural energy drink and start selling matcha powder to coffee shops. And then last year, a few of you might know that they went on Dragon's Den and had the opportunity to tell the brand story to the Dragons, and it went really well. They got all 5 offers, and we brought Stephen Bartlett on board as an investor. But I think the most interesting thing from that was that when we had all these customers come through, we received so many messages from them saying how much they resonated with Marissa's story, whether it was somebody who's a working professional that suffers with anxiety, or a parent whose child had just gone off to university and they've been diagnosed with ADHD. And in that moment, we realized that we had built this really strong community that really resonated with our story, and we were really filling a customer need. And through that, we had this brand loyalty, which has just been really integral to the growth of the brand.
Yeah, I mean, you've completely, your whole storytelling piece through, even knowing is always, you've kept that core, and that's what people know you from. Marissa, Teddy, they live and breathe the story, but also, it really has changed their life. Matcha does have a totally different effect to coffee. So I'm sure lots of people can relate in the room. And John, you've really successfully positioned yourself as a leader in the gut health category, doubling sales in the past year as you scale from 13 million to much greater goals with marketing strategies, etc. And how have marketing strategies, how have they been key to building your brand's visibility, but also educating people along the way? Because you are going down quite a science-backed route with obviously Megan being a doctor.
Yes, good evening. Very nice hearing all those other stories. I suppose if there's a thing about us, it's that science piece you just said. So if you don't know, every one of our products is designed by my co-founder, Dr. Megan Rossi. So she is the gut health doctor, and therefore every single product has a health claim on it. So to a degree, we're therefore operating in a regulated market. So our obsession, the answer to your question, I think, to begin with, is we've been product-led. Our entire obsession has been about making products that are best for your gut health, but that taste nice. Because the one thing that unites us on this panel is we're all foodies. So if you don't taste nice, you're not going anywhere. But we absolutely then have to fit the criteria of being good for your gut health. So once we've done that, and by the way, it's really not easy. So our first granola, when Megan and I first went to the kitchen to do it, it took us 42 recipes until we got the right one. It looks like you just sort of throw it all together and it somehow magically tastes like it. It's an obsession. It takes so long when you're talking about obsessing about the white. So we obsess about the recipes. Then once we've done that, and then Mike, our marketing director at the back, if you've got a product that you think tastes the best and is the best, all you want is people to try it. So all we've done for the last 4 or 5 years until this month, it's been sampling, just sampling. Lunch trade show tomorrow, we treat it as a sampling event. Any way we can find, like tonight, to get our products, people to try it. And we just think if you taste good and you are the best for your gut health, then, well, if you don't convert after that, you're never going to convert. So that's been our obsession. But until this month, where we've just put our heads above the parapet and we're doing our first sort of outdoor campaign you'll see on buses and tubes. So Mike and I came down today and been running around. It's very hard to take a photo of a bus, so you have to sort of jump on it and then jump off quickly, take a photo and jump back on again. So it's our first test of just, does that have the impact on our sales we'd like it to? Does that get the gut health message out there? But before that, product-led.
And as you've just heard, branding clearly plays such a ginormous part in scaling, but behind the scenes, there are so many supply chain challenges that also come into play. As you grow. And John, I'm looking at you because being both in chilled yogurt, I can really relate to this. It's a nightmare when you've got 15 days to shift like pallets of skis. You're a bit like, gosh, you're under pressure. And then you've got the gut health benefits science if they're not kept chilled. Like there's so many things you've got to think about. So as you're like navigating more complex supply chain, especially kind of in a health-driven market and with gut health growing so fast, how have you managed the challenges of scaling supply chain while ensuring that you stay really true to your health-backed claims?
Sorry, it's me again. I'll do this one, then be quiet. So here's the thing. So we've been going 5 years. We'll be 5 in November. And my old job used to be marketing in big food companies. So I'd never done the operation side before. And I think the bit I've learned, and there's another talk last week, listening to Trip with there, etc. They were talking. It's all about the relationship with the co-manufacturers. So we don't make anything ourselves. We run the brand, we do the relationship with the retailers. And we have 6 co-manufacturers who make all our different products. And ultimately, once Megan's created the recipe, we've agreed the specs, etc. You're kind of putting your trust in them, and very often as a startup, you'll be probably the smallest brand they've got. And listening to other people talk last week and then just thinking about the last 5 years, those relationships with the co-manufacturers, Pip and I share one, and we talk about the relationship. It's so important because basically you want to get them to make that best product. And if they don't care, it's going to show at the end of the day. But if they do, and they want to make the very, very best, then yeah, I think honestly, that's what it's all about. Obsess about your relationship with your co-manufacturers. Yeah, that's the key.
And supply chain management in such a competitive market is really key. And I'm looking at Perfect Ted because energy drinks, that's a space I probably wouldn't touch with a barge pole with the likes of the massive conglomerates that play. And you guys have managed to carve out such a niche. And with kind of, energy drinks valued at over 100 billion globally, what strategies have helped Perfect Ted carve out its niche and scale quite quickly to your revenue goal and then and upwards while staying really competitive in a £100 billion category?
Yeah, that's a question. I think that our biggest niche that helped us scale was probably our outside the box thinking. When I met Teddy, Marissa, and Levi, There were a few things that stood out to me about them. They were very ambitious, very driven, very entrepreneurial. They were also very young entrepreneurs who had never had a business before, and they never worked in food and drink before. And as a result, they were incredibly naive. And I honestly say that in the best way possible, because I think that that was their superpower. And Pip, I don't think you had food and drink experience before, right? So you probably resonate with that. But as a result, they weren't doing the same thing that everybody else was doing in the industry. They weren't doing these sort of product-led pictures or talking about just the health benefits. They wanted to build a brand that was centered around community. And the way that they did that was by showing the people behind the brand and showing the highs and lows of building a drinks company. So our third hire was our cameraman, Mark. It's a pretty niche move, I would say. Not a lot of people would do that in a startup, but we wanted to show our customers the people behind the business and really take them on that journey. And you know, that has worked. And that's something that Red Bull and Monster can't do. And I think that that's the niche that has helped us grow to the scale that we're at today.
And slight diversion, actually, because this isn't in my questions list, but I obviously know because we've had this conversation before, but for people sitting in the room that wondering what it's like to work with like Stephen Bartlett, what's it like working with him?
He's great. I mean, exactly how you think he would be. He is a visionary. He's a marketing genius. And also incredibly supportive and understands our vision, and I think gives us the freedom to run with that, and is very supportive. We now sponsor his podcast, Driver CEO. And that's, well, it's been amazing. Sorry.
Actually,
next is you. We're just waiting for the contract to expire. But you know, that has been amazing for brand awareness. I think there's 30 million people that listen to his podcast.
Okay, yeah, fine. I'm getting there, guys.
You are. But you know, from a brand awareness perspective, when you're in the likes of Tesco, Waitrose, Holland & Barrett, M&S, it really does help. And he does an amazing job at obviously telling the brand, but also, again, relating it to his own experience. He was also diagnosed with ADHD on his podcast. So he does have that personal experience with the brand and that buy-in, and that really goes a long way.
And also he lives his life quite heavily like you guys online.
Yes.
So it was a really lovely connection when you went on Dragon's Den, you thought media works.
Yeah,
I can check, And Flora, your ethical sourcing mission adds a layer of complexity to your supply chain because you've got a lot more to think about when it comes to sourcing the right fair trade, cocoa beans, etc. What have been key challenges for you in ensuring that your entire supply chain adheres to your mission while scaling the business? And how have you managed this kind of like tension point?
All right, yeah, there's two questions in that, really.
There is two questions in that.
So I guess to answer the first part, which is how do we ensure that the entire supply chain adheres to kind of the mission, we've got a very clear roadmap and 5 sourcing principles that we stick to, and that will be kind of full traceability. That's really important because unless you have that full traceability, you can't have accountability for your supply chain. Paying a higher price is also really important because we're trying to tackle the problem of exploitation in cocoa, and the root cause is poverty, because the big brands, the big chocolate brands, just don't pay enough for their cocoa. So paying a higher price that allows farmers at the very start of the value chain to earn a living income should be the bare minimum, but you'd be surprised at how little those big corporations have paid for years and years now. We then have 5-year agreements with the cooperatives that we work with, and that means they can really plan ahead, and they have this kind of this ability to reinvest in their business. We also ensure that we only work with cooperatives because together farmers are stronger. And then the last piece of that kind of 5 sourcing principles is all around ensuring kind of better practices to ensure there's kind of no deforestation, ensure better productivity as well. So giving, I guess, our partners the tools to make sure that they have kind of best in class practices on the ground. So, and it's like a cake, right? It's like a recipe for a cake. You can't take something out, otherwise the recipe is not going to quite turn out the way you want to. The cake isn't going to taste nice. So that's kind of answering the first question, and all the mission allies within Tony's Open Chain will sign up to that. And Pip is on the panel, which is quite nice. And Pip has joined Tony's Open Chain this year. So we're kind of scaling at pace. And I guess the second part to your question was, what were the challenges within that? And I think from a selfish perspective, being in the commercial function, that also means that having kind of full traceability and a fully segregated supply chain limits the number of partners, kind of, I guess, factories, commands that we can work with, which means longer lead times when it comes to bringing innovation products, to market. And a good example was this year, our pouch range just meant that we had to find the right partner, do the testing. Everything does take a little bit longer, but we never compromise on quality. We always want to make sure that the product will taste absolutely amazing. Kind of, I guess, fewer, bigger, better. So yeah, I'd say that lead time is probably kind of the number one constraint that I see in having that fully segregated supply chain.
And has that lead time impacted like things like out of stocks on shelf? So have you had the stock, it's been brought to market, and then you've had a gap in supply because of, obviously you've got your partner at that point, but has it then been, they haven't been able, because they might not then be able to get the right ingredient? Yeah. Does it have like a real long knock-on effect?
I think, being a bigger business now, we've not really suffered from kind of out of stocks because we always work quite collaboratively, and we can always, ask our German friends whether, there's maybe a little bit more, that we can get from, or, the Netherlands, which is still our biggest market. So we've not really suffered from challenges of out of stocks, and I think the team has done a quite good job of forecasting up until now.
Yeah.
So touch wood.
And innovation in a really crowded market is essential, but obviously also really heavily influences supply chain. But with that pressure often comes growth. And Pip, you are an amazing kind of example of this as well, because you've gone from peanut butters to your amazing peanut butter cups, which I remember when they first came out, and I was very in my infancy in FMCG and was going to all these different events, just trying to get my hands on goodies and try loads of things. So now having you on the panel is pretty surreal. But you've grown significantly since launch, partly due to expanding product range, but also the fact that people have really understood. They're looking at back of pack. You guys what you're bringing out is way better than the likes of Skippy that have been in the market for ages. And I mean, that goes without saying. And congratulations on your most recent bars, which I'm yet to get my hands on. So how do you decide which new products to develop, balance it all, and what impact has product diversification had on helping your brand grow?
Yeah, I mean, innovation is notoriously tricky, and it can sometimes feel like an easy opportunity for growth, but actually getting innovation to stick and land well in the market is really difficult, and we've definitely had some things that have failed along the way and have had some lessons learned. I think my first probably bit of advice, I guess, is always nurture the core. You can always do more within your core kind of market. Ours is nut butter and peanut butter. So innovate there first. So there's probably more opportunities than you realize there, just to kind of really grow and establish yourself. And certainly over the years made mistakes probably trying to move too quickly away outside of our core. And actually there is something to be said about really focusing and doing a few things very, very well, and not sort of spreading yourself too thinly. So yeah, starting really at the core of where you are from a kind of product point of view, and slowly creep out. For us, sort of leapfrog into cereal bars was sort of an exciting move for us this year. And a big part of that was I guess for us, we're predominantly eating at breakfast. So where could the next occasion be? And so cereal bars and something that's more kind of breakfast orientated felt like a natural kind of step out. And I think the thing to think about is it has to make sense for the consumer, and you can't pull yourself in too many different directions. Otherwise you'll be scattered across the store, and you'll also start to kind of dilute, I guess, what it is that you stand for in the consumer's mind. So really thinking about when you're starting to expand from your kind of core product range, how do you kind of do it slowly into kind of adjacencies and make sure that there is a kind of clear thread that runs through it. But really try and do less better is probably my biggest tip, because, you know, as soon as you add sort of new categories or additional categories into your kind of portfolio, you get supply chain complexities. We've got extra factories. You've then got more kind of buyers that you have to speak to in different categories, and you've got to build the relationships all the way up the top at different categories that you're in. You've also then got to split your marketing budget across multiple different categories. So therefore, instead of just going deep on one area, you've got to invest in a whole new range of impulse products. So you can see how over time it starts to add and add and add. And as a small brand, you're still relatively kind of limited from a budget and a people point of view. So see it as an opportunity for growth, obviously, but again, focus in and not try and go too quick in other areas, would be my advice.
That's a really good point, actually. And again, segueing off my questions, but that's what these live events are for. Has anybody here felt like they might have scaled too quickly on something and it was a kind of a bit of a mistake and had to go, cool, we weren't quite ready for that one?
Definitely.
Okay, please talk about it.
I mean, in our sort of third year of running the business, so sort of 10 years at the end of this year, we launched a range of almond milks, which you can't see anymore because we delisted them a couple of years after launching them. And that was a really good example of like going far too quickly into innovation, into a really big category that was also, almond milks were starting to decline at the time that we launched. And it was just incredibly crowded. And we were a really small team trying to grow our nut butter share and business whilst also landing into a totally new space with a totally different kind of product to make. And I think it was a classic one of like seeing an opportunity and probably running before really thinking about the opportunity. So that would be for me like case in point of it was too quick, too soon into another space. Maybe it would have worked if we'd done it a little bit later down the line, I think, and had a bit more budget to be able to put behind it. But we were just so kind of resource limited from a budget point of view and people that it didn't work. And we had to make a choice. Either we it was kind of like, let's focus back on our core and make sure we're really solid there before we kind of go elsewhere. So
it's such a blessing being a small brand and having like no red tape to be able to do things like that, because if you've got, you know, category teams and an MD, you've got to sign it all past, it kind of does sometimes make it really difficult to do things quickly. But in the same breath, it means that you can run with potentially not the category and the guidance that you might have needed. Yeah. So it's like a double-edged sword, being able to innovate that quickly.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. But also a great example of how sometimes, you know, even
and you
those,
learn through it. It's not always like a completely negative experience. It's something that you kind of grow off the back of, and it's a healthy tension to always hold. It's like how fast you want to move, and to get something to market, you want to be first, but sometimes you might not necessarily do it in the best way possible. So it's a balance. And I think you're always holding that in tension in a good way as a small business.
And
I was going to jump in just because to reinforce your point about focus, by giving maybe a bad example, which is us, because we are in two different categories, and everything you said about the complexity of being included is true. To the degree we've almost started talking about ourselves like two different companies. So we operate in cereals. Where to show the complexity difference, you know, they have a year's shelf life, and then we operate in kefir, yogurts, and soon-to-be drinks. They have 28 days, and it's just it's like having two different companies. So we did it for all good reasons. Those are the two categories where gut health is growing the fastest. So if you want to be the leader, you've kind of got to play there. But my gosh, has it given us that complexity? And yeah, we do sort of internally now started to talk about ourselves almost as two companies because they're so different. So if anybody here is thinking about, you know, you've got one category, and I think your advice 90% of the time stick to that one category because it just does add a lot.
It's different hats as well, because you're reading two different data sets. Like you're reading ambient cereal aisle and then you're reading chilled yogurt aisle.
Well, I was having a chat with somebody earlier today. It's very hard to think about two things at the same time.
Yeah.
It is for an old bloke anyway. And I just, having two categories, whereas our competitors will wake up and if they're just cereal or just kefir, that's all they're thinking about. So I've kind of our team have got to think about twice the amount. So just to be as good as them, we've got to be twice as good, if that makes any sense. So, but by the way, it's working for us, so we're very happy we did it. So, but Pip's point is spot on, and I just think about it really carefully. And what you will not see us do is a third category. Two's plenty.
I can relate to having two different categories. So where I work at Coconut Collaborative, I've got chilled yogurt aisle, dairy-free, and then I've got desserts, also chilled. But they are completely different categories. People that shop down the chilled yogurt aisle might not necessarily shop down desserts and vice versa.
Same buyer or different buyer?
As in like category buyer or like consumer buyer?
Retailer buyer.
No, different buyers.
Different buyer. Okay,
different buyers for yogurts and desserts as well. So it's like I like kind of like separate my deck. So I do like my yogurt sale, and then I'm like, right, now on to desserts, and it is a completely different category. Like, so yeah, it is really difficult navigating, and especially when you're growing a business and you're innovating, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I've got 26 products I'm selling in. Like, which SKU am I selling to which retailer today? So innovation is fantastic, but can also sometimes hold you back in terms of what you're deciding on where you're putting where. But Tony's, you've had to innovate in a very, very crowded chocolate market, in a 4 billion one in the UK. What innovations, whether product-based or strategic, have helped Tony's Chocolate Only stand out and achieve the scale that you guys are seeing today?
You're going to hear similar themes, I think. Back to what Pip was saying, 70% of our business is still bars. So I guess iconic kind of Tony's 180 gram bars. And I think what we've done really well is focus on that kind of those fewer SKUs, make them work really hard. Make sure that you take your time. We've had I think a very intentional distribution strategy when we launched in the UK. You want to make sure that where you launch, you give it the time and focus to make it a success before you jump into kind of the next challenge, to build that credibility. And I think making bars work really hard. We've done quite well. We're now the fourth biggest brand in the UK. So we're bigger than Green and Blacks, which is, I think, quite exciting.
That's amazing.
Yeah, 4% market share. And I think kind of, nurturing that kind of, that category, making sure that you work your core as hard as possible, was, I guess, the biggest challenge, and will continue to be. But we also don't want to be just a bar brand. So we're now kind of looking into, gifting is the biggest subcategory within chocolate. So there will be big innovation coming from Tony's in a couple of years, back to that lead time. We know it's coming. It just feels like such a long way away, but we're being patient because I think it's it'll be worth the wait when it finally launches. But we're now kind of in pouches as well, in impulse. So you'll find us in the Tesco meal deal and kind of in Waitrose meal deal and Sainsbury's and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think it's about doing kind of few things but really well, to build that credibility so that when you bring the next innovation to your buyers, they trust that it's going to be a success. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. What's also
crazy about it does massively. What's also crazy about what you said is that you're the fourth biggest in the UK and you've got 4% market share. So that just shows how much how much market share those real big players are. What is number one? Cadbury.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yeah, I did think so, but I was like, I don't want to. And John, you must have you've had to evolve really rapidly to support the growth, especially as, again, in a specialised kind of health-focused field, which has recently been valued at 1 billion in the UK gut health. How do you ensure that the right people are scaling your ambitions? And what qualities do you prioritise in hiring? Because I think hiring is really key to scaling and innovating. You need teams to do this. But hiring the right people that have the same value for your brand and really want to grow on that mission with you can be really difficult. So what are kind of the key things you look for in people when hiring?
Just thinking up a new innovation strategy, actually, because if gut health is 1 billion and chocolate's 4 billion, we need to launch gut health chocolate. That's the way forward. So, this is interesting. You can tell if I'm going to tell the truth or not, because 3 members of the team are actually here. So Pip, Lydia and Mike, so talk to them afterwards. But I'm worried the first part of the answer might sound a bit complacent, but I think we spoke about purpose. Our purpose is all about improving people's gut health. And the way we do that is by making really tasty products that are better for gut health. Why would you join that team if you weren't just really, really into it? It's the same, with B Corp. And I feel all the people, there's 15 of us so far, we're just really into that. And therefore, I almost don't need to do anything up until this stage because because everybody's just so into it that they're sort of self-defining. Imagine if we tried to do something that didn't have good for your gut on it. It wouldn't be like, you're put on B Corp. Imagine you put out a product that didn't fit. I mean, your team wouldn't let you. So what I think is interesting, and where actually I'm a bit in admiration of particularly Pip and Nut, is we've got to 15 people. You're at about, I think, 30 now. So, and that's double the size. I mean, you said you were 200 or 300. Like, we've now got to start thinking about, okay, when you got the first 15 people who are super passionate, that's brilliant. But then you go to 30 to 40 to 50 people. How do we keep that same passion there? And I don't have the answer, by the way, but I think my job over the next few years, of having done all you have to do barcodes and just make everything work, now it's growing the team to keep, how do we get people if we ever get to 50, how are they going to be as passionate about gut health as the 15 people we've got now? That I think needs to be my obsession for the next few years.
You start like a WhatsApp group of your best like purchasers and then be like, hey, we're hiring, who's keen?
Well, yeah, I mean, you talked about community earlier. Mike and I were talking about community on the train on the way down, yeah. Just getting the most enthusiastic people in. Yeah. It's not a bad hiring. You've done it, haven't you? We
have done that.
Yeah.
Or a WhatsApp group and then hired from it.
No, but
LinkedIn.
I think for us, like, obviously it's incredibly unique the way that the brand has been built, because we've have a cameraman and we filmed everything in the office. And as a result, we've had a lot of people apply to the brand or reach out saying they want to work for us because they see the culture that we put out. They see our values. They also see individual team members. We're looking at 2 right now, Liv and Al. So that's been quite a different experience, I think, that most brands have. And it's worked out really well for us so far. So
you have a very energetic team.
We do.
How do you... Yeah, I've answered my own question. I was going to say, how do you constantly hire like Duracell bunnies? But I guess they're watching from behind the scenes and thinking, I'm going to join that and I want to be part of it.
Yeah, I think to give a bit of a cop-out answer, I don't think you can teach energy.
No.
I think you either have it or you don't. And yeah, it has to be innately in you. And we're very fortunate that the team that we do have, they are like that. But again, I think it's because they've seen what we put out there and that aligns with them, that resonates with them. They are aligned with our culture, they're aligned with our values, and that's so important. Before I worked in food and drink, I worked in financial services for 7 years, and I know what it feels like to not be aligned from a culture and a values perspective. I know a lot of people, but hopefully not in this room, because food and drink is an amazing industry, but a lot of people have probably felt that way. And so it is such a blessing to wake up every day and feel like I'm really aligned with like our mission, our culture and our values. And I hope that everyone in our team feels that way. I think they do.
And also like all the brands in front of me here, like none of you're not taking yourselves too seriously. And I think that's also really fun, and it makes you want to work for the brands because you know you're going to go in and there's going to be fun things going on in the office and you're going to make it a community. And I can speak from TCC. I've been there, 6 years now. And it's such a family. And it's just really hard to tear away from that when you are part of such a community for a brand that you work for, which I think plays like a big role in hiring. And team culture and values, as we've spoken out, are really crucial to success. And going back to Tony's, your team has grown significantly to obviously your 300 employees and like globally. How do you maintain that culture where each new hire is aligned with the mission? To create kind of obviously the slave-free chocolate that you guys do? And how has this focus on values contributed with your ability to scale? Have you found that hiring process has been quite difficult?
Yeah, I think the hiring process is incredibly important. And I think we've done that quite well in the UK. So we're now 30. The original, we call ourselves the Basement 4 because when we started, we had an office in a basement and it was just like a round table, a printer on the floor. And it was very much like you do it all, you kind of package things up and you run to the post office, you come back, and we're doing a trade show on a Monday, and then you can, 3 meetings in a day. It was just kind of a wild, but great journey. And I was listening to a podcast, which I'm not going to name, but we know which one. And it was the co-founder of Netflix who was talking about how your first 10 employees will set the tone and will be the culture, and everything then filters down from that. And I was listening to that podcast this week, and that really clicked with me, because thinking back to kind of that at Tony's, it is so true. And you kind of maintain, certain things. Like, for example, we always bake for someone else's birthday.
Oh, yeah, that's
that, we've maintained that from 4 to now 30. And I think there's something just like really caring. The importance of the hiring is making sure that people want to join for the right reasons. And obviously the relevant experience is also important. And then the second thing is sometimes you won't get the hiring right. And, it happens. And it's about being super clear and transparent, from day one with people that join the business about what success looks like for them and for us. And just being really kind of honest about that throughout. So that if things don't work out, which sometimes will happen, it's done in a very caring, honest, and transparent way, to make a decision, together, like, is this working for you? Is this working for us? And if it's not, to have kind of an adult, honest, open conversation about it. Because you don't want to let, things, I guess, fester and not work out for too long. It becomes so hard when you do that. Yeah.
Definitely. And Pip, you've got a really close-knit team as well. All you squirrels up there. What kind of strategies have you got in place? Anything different to the guys that have spoken about that you're doing differently? Or what do you say has like been really key in terms of your hiring process?
Yeah, I mean, it's the age-old thing, isn't it? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it's not what you do, it's the way you go about doing it. It's the most important thing in your business are the people that are helping you deliver what it is, the vision for the brand. So yeah, it comes first and foremost. I think the only thing I'd probably build is just keeping that openness of feedback constantly across the business, especially as you grow. As you go from a team of 2, 3, 4, you're just around a table, everything just flows by osmosis. It's very relatively easy from a comms point of view, and 30 is not exactly a massive business, but it's still different from those early days where you just have a quick chat and things get done. So some of the things they're not mind-blowing, but just making sure there's a constant flow of feedback. So whether it's through engagement surveys, every 2 weeks I go and have a coffee with someone in my team and I'm getting around the whole team by the end of the year. So I get that feedback. I ask the same 3 questions to everyone in the team when I go for those coffees, just to get a bit of a feel and sense check across the business of what's going on. And I think the more open you are to kind of having open conversations across the team and taking ideas from anyone, doesn't matter what your department is, it creates a much more collaborative, exciting, and just, I think, supportive culture. So I think it's really not about all the perks. Obviously, it's nice to have like free breakfast in the morning and all that stuff. Like, that's great, but it is like the smaller things and I think really being available and open is probably my biggest tip, I think, in terms of as you scale and grow, and not forgetting about that.
And everybody really wants to feel part of a team. I think it's really important that you don't want to go into work and feel really isolated from your team. You want to make sure that you are on the clear same vision and mission. So I think that constant circle of feedback is really important. And you're right, like, culture does really trickle down, and how your founders and, the heads of acting really does set the tone. And I think especially with COVID hitting and people working from home and having to navigate, are you coming in today? Or I've got a doctor's appointment. Allowing that, that as well is really important. The flexibility around work now. So it is a really tricky balance, because you want your employees to feel like really empowered. But then if you're managing, a team of quite junior people, it's also really difficult to manage their time if they're, working from home. So it is really hard, especially with the flexibility now that is kind of expected. Yeah. I think that's something that big brands must really struggle with, keeping all their employees in checks all the time. And I know we've touched on this a little bit briefly, but expanding into kind of new markets and innovating into different markets, what have been some of the biggest challenges within that? So we've spoken about how obviously expanding into nutmeg did too quickly, but I guess, Shani, for you, would it be more like pack format? So from going from single cans to selling into 3 packs into Tesco's and Sainsbury's and all that, has that been kind of an issue, trying to find co-packing and manufacturers?
From a supply chain perspective, No.
Gosh, she's just doing it right.
No.
You're meant to be like, yeah, it's been awful.
No, and I'm laughing because I think probably everyone in this room knows what it's like to have supply chain challenges, and yeah, we definitely have had our fair share. When I joined the company, we had 3 products. We had 3 energy drinks. In retail, in less than 3 years, we now have 21 retail products. It's been phenomenally quick growth. I think the biggest thing is we have 3 manufacturers just on the matcha side. Our matcha obviously comes from Japan. It's really long lead times. We recently released some MPD. We launched flavored matcha powder and matcha Nespresso pods. And we obviously put together a forecast, that we thought was really solid. And those products ended up performing incredibly well, 5 times the expected forecast. And it's been really tough. On one hand, yes, it's a great challenge to have. A lot of people say that. On another hand, we've launched with lots of new retailers, and we want to make sure that we're giving them the best service possible and that we're maintaining that trust and relationship. So it is quite hard. But I think the biggest lesson that I've learned personally is just to have phenomenal communication between your sales and your operations team, and make sure that they're really clear on what MPD you're pitching, what's the base rate of sale, what's the promotional rate of sale, what's the initial stock fill, and making sure that you have processes in place that can grow with you as you scale, because the last thing you want is to be getting a lot of momentum and then you're dedicating human resource to try and put processes in place to make it work. You need to be really focused again on delivering for the customer, making sure that you're helping them hit their goals, whatever their internal KPIs are. And again, keeping that great relationship and that trust going is so important.
I mean, you guys have also had rapid expansion, 900% year on year with your massively digital kind of faced approach to marketing. What have been most effective in terms of marketing strategies in scaling your brand?
A few. I think digital strategy has been really interesting for us. And for example, if I take our online strategy, so when we went on to Dragon's Den, we decided that due to limited resource of both human and financial, that we would focus on our e-commerce platform to take all the sales from Dragon's Den. And we didn't obviously know how many people would come through, how many customers we'd get, but it was, it was great. And the website didn't crash. That was a success. And we wanted to leverage that to then have that community of people that we could then email and obviously have them and speak to them. But actually, as a result, we ended up not focusing on Amazon. And it was the right decision for us at the time. But on the night of Dragon's Den, Perfect Head was more searched for than pregnancy tests and energy drinks itself, which is pretty crazy. And obviously, in hindsight, that was a bit of a missed opportunity. And this year, we've really focused on our Amazon channel. Because what we found is that customers will try our products at one of our out-of-home customers. They'll go into one of our leading coffee chain customers. They'll pick up maybe it's a vanilla matcha latte, and then they'll want to replicate that at home. And people aren't just going to Google anymore to find that. They're actually going onto Amazon, and they'll ask the barista, what matcha powder are you using? They'll say Perfect Head, and then they'll find our Amazon page, and they'll often buy it with a vanilla syrup and maybe an Oatly, for example. So that's been really interesting to see that halo effect of how our external sales and our home sales has impacted our online sales. But we've really dedicated a lot of resource to online. We've been putting £400 a month on our Amazon budgets for our ads. And within 6 months, we're the 4th best-selling matcha brand. It's a £600,000 channel for us. It's profitable. And we're investing more money to obviously try to get to that number 1 spot, which I'm pretty confident we'll get by the end of the year. Watch this space.
That's amazing. And Pip, do you tend to focus more on digital, physical? How does your kind of marketing strategy, how's that helped you really scale?
It's changed over the years. In the earlier years, it was very much kind of below the line activity, and we focused very heavily on kind of partnerships, trial, a lot of what John was saying about if you want to get people to convert, you need to get them to trial it. So events was our real heartland, and making sure we were really kind of delivering the best serve possible. So we did lots of things like toast bars, where we'd do these amazing sourdough toast bars at Nike events, at Lululemon events, all in the early days. And they were a lot of fun and a lot of scrabbling around at the same time. But I guess it's that kind of tension now as a kind of national brand trying to support kind of national listings and rate of sale across the board. So we do dip our toe into a bit of above the line advertising, and we've done sort of a mix of different things from TV, a bit of TV, as well as also sort of tube and bus size and things like that. But I think the key is just making sure that from our point of view, like the creative is as focused on as much as the media that you're buying, because you still won't ever have the media budgets that you're going to be able to compete necessarily with like the Unilevers. So how can you make your creative as sort of attention grabbing as possible? And I heard this great thing the other day that really resonated, or that I was reading on LinkedIn the other day around, when you're in a kind of relatively commoditized category, which kind of peanut butter is quite commoditized. When it comes to kind of advertising, you almost have to be a bit different and a bit more kind of disruptive to try and get people's attention. But if you have a product that is more unconventional, then you need to play to more of the kind of norms and be sort of explain a little bit more and be a bit more explicit about what it is that you do, if that makes sense. And so our job is to try and be that disruptive and be trying to get people to reconsider, I guess, a product, which more often than not, when they walk past the shelves, they just kind of pick up what they normally buy and carry on. So trying to think a bit more differently, even when you are dipping your toe into more traditional forms of media. But yeah, it is a real mix. I mean, with our bars, which are right at the early days now of getting them out in the market, it's all back to sampling and trial in those kind of early tactics. But digital, to answer your second part, it is part of our mix, and certainly our kind of e-com as well is a big focus. We've got a relatively big kind of email database that has pretty high open rates and conversion on it. But really, it's sort of one part of the mix now, and actually we don't pay a huge amount from a paid digital media, although I'm starting to think we need to do a bit more having listened to you. But it is more just a community, kind of a brand love piece that we really nurture there. But we do know that to kind of drive the brand forwards, we do need to invest. So yeah, a bit of both now.
And Flora, how are you making Tony's known in, a category where Cadbury's is just green? I'm thinking is purple and just everywhere. I think with you, I obviously live and breathe FMCG, so I kind of, live and breathe it, so I know it very well, but I see you everywhere. And, your out-of-home team and your sales team must be so on it, because there's probably not one independent coffee shop I ever go into where I don't see Tony's, and that's my marketing. So what's been kind of your strategy?
Yeah, so I think similar themes again, like when we launched in the UK, the first 2 years were very much about, we picked 2 grocers that we're going to really work with and sort of build the category story. But on the other hand, the intention was to really just get out and about and build as much distribution in your kind of independent, like local shop, in your farm shops, your delis, support with lots of samplings. We've always been very generous with our product, because we've always believed that if your product tastes good, people will come back for it. And so our bar is our best marketing tool. It tells the story. The reason the bar is unequally divided is because it's a representation of the chocolate industry, which is unequal. You've got farmers living in, well below the poverty line on one hand, and then you've got, a handful of chocolate brands that make billions of profits. So we've got our manifesto that's printed inside the wrapper, and so very much, being generous with our product, making sure that we just sample as much, as we can, was kind of, a combination of those 2 things, I guess, kind of build the distribution, the availability, but also be generous with the product so people could try and kind of, come back to it and keep buying. And again, now, within food service, we've had lots of success this year. The food service team has done an amazing job building distribution. I was sharing with some of the guys earlier, the likes of LW Theatres and, Royal Albert Hall. You can find us in lots of coffee chains and independent coffee shops. So really nurturing those relationships, making sure that everywhere you go, you kind of, you can, notice the red bar. Yeah.
Definitely. Now that we've explored all of your incredible journeys of how your brands have kind of scaled, I'd like to shift the focus a little bit to the future. So John, as the UK's fastest growing gut health brand, BioMe has tapped into increasing customer demand for functional foods. What trends are you seeing in this space, and how do you plan to leverage your kind of presence and expand? And I heard you talking about your drinks.
Oh yes, we count them as kefir. So I suppose I'm going to go back to the conversation Pip and I were having earlier about sort of focus. We're focusing on two areas. And in terms of trends, we're going to stay focused on those two areas because we're very lucky. That's where the gut health market is really growing fastest. There are other categories we could go into, kombucha, melamoma earlier, etc. There's lots of places we could go, but we just need to win in those two. Because right now they're just growing so fast. And there's a lot of people out there talking about gut health education. Tim Spector earlier? Yeah. Just, Megan, Tim Spector, everybody out there, the more noise, the more talk there is about gut education, it's just driving the market, which is fantastic. So we're going to stay focused on those two. As you've given me the opportunity to plug, at the moment we're in Cafe Yogurts. In a week's time, we will be in Cafe Drinks. So if you are a Sainsbury's shopper, there's a couple of hundred very select stores we'll be in. First production is on Thursday this week. Keep your fingers crossed.
And Perfect Head, the energy drink market is obviously, as we've spoken about, very competitive, yet you guys have carved out such a unique space. And with your recent extra 1 million from Stephen Bartlett into Perfect Head, and your really rapid retail expansion, how do you see the trends in energy drinks going? Do you see the likes of Red Bull kind of competing and having a look and thinking, oh, this brand's making waves, how are we gonna stay on top?
Hopefully. I think consumers are more conscious than before about what they're putting into their body. Previously you would drink a Red Bull or Coca-Cola to get your caffeine or your energy source, but I think consumers today are obviously focused on physical health, but also mental health. That's been a big part of our brand, as I said about Marissa's story, about having ADHD and anxiety and having that neurodiverse story from Marissa. There are a lot of people who can't tolerate caffeine from traditional energy sources, and we're really winning in that space. The way that we think about the energy market, we think about it in 3 waves. So the first was with the likes of Red Bull and Monster, who were just providing energy at any cost. And then the second wave was the same type of energy, but in a natural format. The third wave, which is the wave that we're leading, is functional energy. So customers today, they do expect that their products are going to be natural, but they want more from their products than ever before. That's why, our brand is a functional energy brand that gives you longer lasting energy and better focus. And I think that you just need to kind of look at the data to show that it's clear that we're winning in that space. We're the UK's fastest growing energy drink, but we also contributed 51% of the natural energy drink growth out of 23 brands. So I think that shows that we're clearly filling a need that consumers want and leading that movement, which we're very proud of.
Yeah, whoa, amazing. I think you guys are on something really cool and I'm excited to see it all pan out in the future. And Pip and Nut, have we spoken about Pip and Nut? Have you spoken about back of pack and you guys are literally peanuts and sea salt and then, you're added, I loved your maple one. Oh, I know, I used to drink it. It was so good. I didn't really, but it was my fave. It was so delicious. How do you see the peanut butter category evolving? I know there's been some players that have entered that weren't there when you kind of pioneered it. What's coming? What do you see coming?
Yeah, it's exciting actually. We were looking at some data in the last week or so where we were looking at kind of the percentage of sales from brands that contain palm oil and percentage of brand share of the category that doesn't contain palm oil. So when I started the business, a big driver for launching the brand was because nearly every single product that I could find in supermarkets had palm oil in from a peanut butter point of view. And I was like, this just doesn't need to be in there. It's a natural product. You just need 2 ingredients, peanuts and sea salt, and it will taste amazing. And it was so when the brands launched, the category was 60% of the products that you could find were predominantly made with palm oil. Now, or actually more than that, so it's about 70%. Whereas now it's now tipped into more sales are going through products that don't contain palm oil than those that do. So it's been a slow shift over the last few years of more and more consumers accepting a natural product that doesn't add extra shit in there that you don't need. And I find that really exciting just generally as you see these sort of changes in behaviours, that actually something when I first was pitching the brand to investors before I launched the business, I remember a lot of people people just won't eat this. It's, got a bit of oil on the top, you'll have to stir it in if consumers won't accept something that's not stabilized with palm oil and other things. So it's really great to see actually more consumers over time accepting things that are more natural. And I think it comes back to your point of it's a piece on health, but it's also a piece on sustainability. So I hope that momentum continues, and obviously people know it's a big part of the reason why that has been a shift in I guess the norm in this particular category. And so I guess our job is to continue to do that in other spaces now. Same goes for cereal bars. Every single bar, look on the back of the pack, what's in there? Palm oil or loads of other ingredients. So I think for me, it's just trying to get back to kind of more real ingredients, more natural products, something that you would find in your kitchen. And I hope that brands all around us that sitting around the table will kind of drive that momentum forwards in every category, because I think consumers ultimately deserve that.
Definitely. And I think with ultra processed food being such a trend, it's definitely not going anywhere, especially with the documentaries on Netflix coming out. Every week there's a new one about food and how it affects your health and your gut and etc. So yeah, massively. I'd like to go around to each panelist to give one piece of advice to any entrepreneur, anyone thinking of starting their own brand, anyone that's 3 years into their own brand, of one piece of advice that you would give to them that you wish you'd known before you started or before you took the job at Perfect Head and became head of sales, that kind of thing. What is it that you would want to tell someone? It was all in your show notes, guys, so you should have your answers for it.
I can go first.
Go on then.
My piece of advice would be just to start. I have had a couple of businesses, but I've also worked with a lot of entrepreneurs now. And I think a lot of people will think that some people have more confidence than the others. But I think the biggest thing I've learned is we all have the same insecurities and the same fear. The difference is that you feel the fear and you do it anyway. And if anyone's in this room thinking, do I, don't I promise you, do it. It will be the best thing you ever do. We're all in the same boat. The only way that you're going to learn is by going for it. So yeah, my advice would be just start.
Mine would be, I guess, maybe for those a bit further along in the journey, figuring out, what your role is in the business. It's maybe something that I've been thinking about a lot over the last couple of years, but it's to focus on the things as the founder of the business of, what only you can do and what you can do the best, and then build a team around you that can also help support those things that maybe are less your specialism, and really kind of own the things that you are brilliant at and embrace them, rather than worry about the things that maybe aren't your kind of area of expertise, because no one person will be good at everything. So yeah, that would be mine. And have some fun along the way. I think it's a really, really tough thing to do, but I think you do a great job of documenting it and making sure that you really do remember that it's such a privilege to have a brand or be part of a scaling brand that's doing incredible things. So yeah, just don't forget that, because it is enjoy the journey. Everyone says that, but really do. I'm
going to start with something I'm glad I didn't know, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
Which, because the whole thing about just get stuck in is true. What I am glad is I didn't realize how bloody hard work it is.
Naivety at the start is your superpower.
Maybe there's a difference. I'm older than most people. I'm 53. I'll declare. And I had lots of nice, comfortable jobs before I did this that I don't think I really appreciated enough at the time. Getting that lovely monthly paycheck, a nice office, all the rest of it. It was brilliant. But I've worked so much harder in the last 5 years. I have had more fun. I'm very glad I just gave it a go. But I do slightly get annoyed with the LinkedIn world of because we only ever share good news. We all try and make it look effortlessly easy. Mm-hmm. Actually, maybe you're a bit more honest than that. But actually, just if you are going to give it a go, just know it's bloody hard work. You will get there. Persistence is a wonderful thing, but please don't think it's easy, because it's not. And I think I thought it was much easier than it actually would be. If I was to flip it around, then give one tip. I think one thing I learned when you start, because I had worked at Procter & Gamble and Nestle and places like that before, is when it was just Megan and me, it was our reputation, it's our names that, I spoke about co-manufacturers earlier. Our first co-manufacturer, he took such a risk. He dedicated 6 months of his life. He went about £70,000 in debt for us. And he did that because of Megan and me. And I was thinking about it afterwards, right. When I asked him, what could we do to be the best customer? His answer was, pay your bills on time. I know. And it's such a small, but actually to him, that was everything, because then we were reliable, etc. So I just think about your own reputation and pay your bills on time, basically. Yeah. There you go.
Themes again, but when I'm listening to others talk, I think
when I look back to my journey, I remember when I was interviewing for Tony's, and I received a call from a recruiter who was telling me about this Dutch brand looking to launch chocolate in the UK. I was thinking to myself, okay, you've got Cadbury's and Mars, who are very much, kind of like British, very much established, well-loved brand. And I started chatting to friends, family, people in the industry, someone who's also in the room. And I was, asking for advice, like, should I not? Is this crazy? The room was split. Some were like, you're mad, you're never going to crack chocolate in the UK. The UK is the home of Mars and Cadbury's, never going to work. And others were like, you're clearly trying to get me to say, go for it when you've already made the decision you are going to do it. So just trust yourself, go for it. Gut feel is so important. And I think there's, one element of the answer is, trust your gut feel. Like often it will be right. Then if I had to, not a founder, but if I had to share maybe one advice, it would be to allow yourself to take risks and to fail. And I think sometimes we're paralyzed by the idea of failing. But actually, if you show a bit of vulnerability and allow yourself to fail, show your team that it's also okay to fail. That's how you learn. You make mistakes. Okay, you get up, you go again, you learn from those. And the key thing is, learn from them. Like, don't make them twice. That, making them twice is not okay. But just, allow yourself to take risk, because that's how you're going to move forward and continue kind of learning, progressing as an individual, but also that means you take the business forward. Maybe be vulnerable, and it's okay to make mistakes. That's how you learn.
Well, massive round of applause for our 4 amazing panelists.
Well done.
Well done.